Let's discuss Guru Padmasambhava's The Life of Guru Padmasambhava. Yesterday we discussed earlier about Guru Padmasambhava's birth, whether it was womb birth, miraculous birth, or lotus birth. Some of the reasoning regarding these matters, we've also discussed some of this before. Then next it says, moreover, regarding the time Guru Padmasambhava resided in the Tibetan region, some say it was 3 years, some say 6 years, and others say 12 years. Still others say 18 years. In some terma treasures, a few mention 50 years. The majority mention over 100 years. In terms of the time Guru Padmasambhava resided in the Tibetan region, there are indeed different accounts, especially these histories from the scriptural transmission teachings. Perhaps Guru Padmasambhava's time staying in the Tibetan region especially wasn't very long. The other day when we studied Journey to the West, His Holiness was in New York. In his discourse at that time, I remember he said 55 years. 55 years. There's also a basis for this in Padma Kathang, the lotus-born, the life story of Padmasambhava. It's also discussed this way. Then it seems last year that one you all heard, Guru Padmasambhava's Inner Instructions of Padmasambhava, Words of the Practice. I also translated it into Chinese. Khenpo Sultrim Lodro taught it to you all. In there it said at that time that when Dakina Yeshe Tsogyal was 13 years old, she met Guru Padmasambhava and remained constantly by his side, serving Guru Padmasambhava. Finally, she stayed in the Tibetan region for 111 years. Then these teachings of Guru Padmasambhava, she organized them into written texts and concealed those teachings as terma for future revelation. It's discussed this way. If this is the case, Dakin Yeshe Tsogyal, when she met Guru Padmasambhava at age 13 and later stayed in the Tibetan region for 111 years, that should be 124 years. When Guru Padmasambhava departed at that time, calculating this way, Dakin Yeshe Tsogyal should also have been 124 years old. Then after Guru Padmasambhava departed for the Raksasa land, Dakin Yeshe Tsogyal, for how many years did she continue to conceal termas of his related teachings? She also stayed for a very long time. The more I talk, the more confused I'm getting now. Moreover, from the perspective of disciples with pure perception, they believe Guru Padmasambhava still remains in this world, including us now as well. On the 10th day of every month of Tibetan calendar, through uncommon blessings, he comes before every disciple to bestow blessings, empowerments, and so forth. So this is also a relatively common view. And in all the pure lands, he simultaneously and constantly manifests his form. Perhaps in different pure lands, from the level of pure perception disciples, truly the Buddha manifests everywhere. In the biography of Kedrupje, Tsongkhapa also, one was before Maitreya Bodhisattva, one was at Mount Wutai, and so forth. In the biography of Sakya Pandita as well, while Sakya Pandita was teaching Dharma in the Tibetan region, it said another emanation of him was teaching Dharma in the Han region, and so on. There are many different biographies, so for people with pure perception, Guru Padmasambhava can appear in many places at the same time. This is possible. On the one hand, Guru Padmasambhava can manifest however he wishes, but to measure this by temporal sequence and chronological order is not reasonable. So from our human history, from the worldly conventional perspective, it has its own patterns. From this perspective, to say Guru Padmasambhava is omnipresent, especially modern anthropologists, they desperately try to correspond many eras and ages, at least within a certain range. But I see they're also very exhausted sometimes, including some archaeologists. The ages they establish are all estimates. They estimate that it might be this way. They make judgments relying on some instruments because their own conceptual minds have no other way. They make judgments this way. In that case, it's also very difficult. So from human history or measuring by temporal sequence, if we say Guru Padmasambhava in the Tibetan region, 50 years is fine, 110 years is fine, 18 years is fine, 15 years is fine. In that case, it's just nonsense. This definitely won't work. So Tāranātha, here he analyzes from two perspectives, because these manifestations need to be based on the common perception of ordinary beings at that time, because these manifestations should be from that time. For instance, whether it was the 18th century, the 20th century, or at that time, especially Guru Padmasambhava, the century when he appeared in the Tibetan region was the 8th century. In the 8th century, at that time, truly, in human society, there was already a certain calendar, history, and various aspects were manifest. It should be measured according to historical perspective. At that time, what was the perception of ordinary beings at that time? For example, people's lives in the 19th century, their history, their way of life. Using this to measure, actually, this is very correct. So in the future, we should. Why this time when teaching, we as Nyingmapas, although we can't completely determine some things, including Confucius's age, ancient Greece's the Virgin Mary we discussed the other day, or the detailed history of many great people in the world, now it's very difficult to determine, but at least there are some materials. Now whether on the internet or now many things are very convenient, not like before. In the past, like Mipham Rinpoche and others, they search through wisdom. Now it's not necessary like this. So we may also need to care about exactly how Guru Padmasambhava appeared in what manner. Otherwise, for us as Nyingmapas, we won't have any wrong views about Guru Padmasambhava, won't have any doubts. But in this world, we may encounter all kinds of people, especially modern people have particularly heavy conceptual thinking, and moreover, to a certain extent, they study history, anthropology, the geography of the entire world, and various aspects quite extensively. So before them, if we don't have genuine reasoning, that's a bit difficult. So at that time before Atisha, two bhiksus with pure conduct came, but finally when discussing prajna emptiness, they covered their ears and ran away. So if someone tells us about Guru Padmasambhava's history and we have no way to answer, finally covering our ears and running away isn't necessary either. We can also study, so this is still very important. Then here in the king's narrative it says, there are altogether 3 versions of the testimony of Ba. This testimony of Ba is also called the Chronicle of Samye Monastery, the best history of Samye Monastery. There's the authentic, the testimony of Ba, and also the testimony of Ba, left from the first propagation of Buddhism in Tibet, and also a Kadampa supplementary addition to it. This seems to be Kudon Tsundru Yungdrung, perhaps it's him. Some later scholars believe the testimony of Ba has this. I hope those present should still take a look at the testimony of Ba. Originally on my side, I also distributed a Chinese version to everyone. Last year, in 2024, the Nationalities Publishing House also reprinted it as a major national project. Actually, their reprint also has different versions. Actually, for all Tibetans, the testimony of Ba is very important, because for genuine historical texts from the first propagation of Buddhism in Tibet, the testimony of Ba is probably the most important. For later dissemination of Buddhism in Tibet, such histories are quite numerous. Now, some scholars believe that Guru Padmasambhava coming to the Tibetan region, especially the matter of consecrating Samye Monastery, doesn't appear in the testimony of Ba. Because it doesn't appear, they have some doubt about this. Some also say this. Actually, we believe that not mentioning this point in the testimony of Ba doesn't necessarily mean it didn't exist, because in the testimony of Ba, some matters about Guru Padmasambhava are also discussed quite extensively. However, in some places, looking at the testimony of Ba, it mainly discusses. One is at that time between the Tibetan region and India, some relations between Tubo and India, then the relations between Tubo and the Tang dynasty, then Tubo itself, from King Trisong Detsen onwards, the entire history of the Tibetan region. Various aspects are discussed quite extensively. So such an important matter, why wasn't it discussed at that time? Some also say this, but in some other histories from the later dissemination of Buddhism in Tibet, when Samye was consecrated, Guru Padmasambhava's appearance is unanimously acknowledged. For example, Gyalrap Salwe Melong, composed at that time by Sonam Gyaltsen of the Sakya school. This is a very important, reliable history. In this, it also discusses that Guru Padmasambhava participated in its consecration ceremony, and also the fifth, Shijigyamo Leyang, cuckoo's melodious sound, also the records of Tibet's kings and ministers. These two are quite famous, and also in the Blue Annals and Red Annals it also appeared. It should be the New Red Annals. In the Old Red Annals it may not necessarily be there, and also in that one there is also Kepi Katun, the Scholar's Feast, by Pawo Tsukla Trengwa. In all these it says Guru Padmasambhava. At that time propagated the Dharma in the Tibetan region, the entire situation, especially in the founding of Samye Monastery, it's there. Then the author of the testimony of Ba Sel Nang at that time was one person among the 7 early monks of Tibet, the Sami Mudon. He composed it, and then later the testimony of Ba has different versions. It seems in here some different supplementary additions were also discussed. Some scholars believe that the testimony of Ba from the early propagation period at that time may have been damaged. Now some texts from Dunhuang comparing these two, the one composed by Ba Sel Nang at that time, still has many aspects that were changed like this. And some people believe that the testimony of Ba, some later compositions, there's this kind of saying, but actually truly the history of our Tibetan region, the later ones, most are from the 12th century, 17th century, 18th century. At that time there were quite a few more histories. Genuine early propagation period history besides the testimony of Bia, there aren't many, so this is very valuable. In the history of the Tibetan region at that time, the most important processes, and it's very necessary for everyone to consult these. Here, he says, just now there was one. Then at that time, Tāranātha said, I read all the testimony of Ba and consulted excerpts from the testimony of the king and composed some historical ancient texts. Although there are differences in detail, the main body of the stories is consistent. In this, the testimony of Ba, it seems there are many. Actually, this, I think I recorded some once, but I don't know where I put it now. Great learned masters also take these 3 versions as reliable evidence. Among them, all of Guru Padmasambhava's history is generally consistent with most of the history in the early translation scriptural transmission, generally consistent. Some in the scriptural transmission teachings and Guru Padmasambhava's appearance in the testimony of Ba should be consistent, so at that time Tāranātha also definitely read them in detail. But in this, it seems now many scholars believe that Guru Padmasambhava's participation in the consecration doesn't appear in the testimony of Ba. It seems previously someone specifically about this place raised many, many doubts. So sometimes we should study the testimony of Ba for the entire history of the Tibetan region. This is left from the early propagation period, a very precious historical text. The testimony of Wa and the testimony of Ba are just different pronunciations. The content is the same, although there's another one called the testimony of Wa. A specific version hasn't been seen. It may also be a typo for the testimony of Ba. Combining these contents, these records are very credible. At that time, he said regarding Guru Padmasambhava. Later, there will also be some discussion of related matters raised in the testimony of Ba. They should be very credible. Generally, at that time, Baselnang still, regarding his wisdom, everyone publicly acknowledged it among the semi-mudon. So we should. Academic historical studies are very important. Generally in academia, now regarding terma or pure vision, some masters' pure visions in which they see Guru Padmasambhava go to Zangdok Palri, copper-colored mountain. These are generally not acknowledged by academia, so we must both understand the terma of faith and the teachings within some pure visions, and at the same time, more importantly, engage with historical academic research. This is very important. Okay, let's stop here.
Bandara Padma Sodargye